My husband's family invited me to a surprise meeting. When I arrived, they handed me divorce papers and said, "Sign these, or you'll regret it." I smiled, pulled out my own papers, and said, "I have a surprise for you too." My husband's jaw dropped when he saw what I had. It all started when I got a text from my husband's sister, Kayla. We were never close, she only texted me if she had to pass on a message from their mother or complain, so when I saw her name on my phone, I felt uneasy. "Hey, we're having a small family gathering at Mom's house on Sunday at 3 p.m. It's important, don't tell Albert, it's a surprise." No greeting, no kindness, just a demand. I showed the text to my best friend, Claire. She frowned. "That's weird, why wouldn't Albert know about it?" Good question. My husband, Albert, was very close to his family. If something was happening, he'd usually be the first to know, but this time, he had no idea. Curious, I texted Kayla back. "Sure, see you then." I didn't tell Albert, I wanted to find out what was going on myself. On Sunday, I drove to my mother-in-law's house. It was a big, fancy home in Charleston, South Carolina, the kind of house that always felt cold. As soon as I walked in, I knew something was wrong. The whole family was there, Albert's parents, Kayla, his two brothers, even his aunt and uncle who lived far away. They all sat in the living room like a serious meeting. On the table was a folder. The room was tense. "Sit down," his mother said. I stayed by the door, crossing my arms. "What's going on?" Albert's father, Kelly, opened the folder and slid the papers toward me. "We need you to sign these, it's for the best." I stepped closer and looked. "Divorce papers." I laughed. "Are you serious?" His mother nodded. "We've thought about this carefully. You don't fit into our family, you don't respect our traditions, you don't help Albert the way a wife should, and honestly, you're just a distraction to his future." I blinked. "A distraction?" Kayla smirked. "You know you don't belong here, we're just making things easier for Albert." I looked around, they weren't asking, they were ordering me to leave. They actually thought they could kick me out of my own marriage. I chuckled. "Where is Albert?" His father shifted. "He doesn't know about this yet, we're protecting him from the stress of." I held up a hand. "So let me get this straight, you set this up, wrote divorce papers without telling Albert, and expect me to sign them because you said so?" His mother smiled. "It's for the best." That's when I smirked. I reached into my bag, pulled out my own folder, and placed it on the table. "Actually, I have a surprise for you too." They stared at it like it was something dangerous. Albert's father opened it. As he flipped through the pages, his face turned red, his hands shook. What is this?" I leaned in. "Proof." His mother grabbed the papers, reading in shock. Kayla snatched a page and gasped. Albert's father glared at me, his face red with anger. This is fake, there's no way you." "Oh, but I did," I said, tilting my head, "and you just proved you know exactly what's in those papers, otherwise, why are you so scared?" Silence. Albert's uncle, who had been quiet the whole time, reached for a page. As he read, his eyes widened. "Kelly, is this true?" Albert's father didn't respond, his jaw was clenched so tight, I thought his teeth might break. His mother's hands trembled as she put the papers down. She looked at me, pale. You have no idea what you've done." I smiled. "Oh, I think I do." The room was completely still. Albert's family sat frozen, their perfect world falling apart. Kayla's face was pale, her hands clenched into fists. His mother looked like she had just swallowed something sour. His father? He was shaking with rage. But I wasn't waiting for them. Right on cue, the front door opened. Albert walked in, looking confused. "Hey, Mom said there was some kind of..." He stopped when he saw the scene in front of him. His eyes darted between the divorce papers on the table and the documents I had brought. What's going on?" His mother jumped up. "Albert, sweetheart, sit down, we can explain." I cut her off. "You should sit down, Albert, you'll want to hear this." I didn't give anyone a chance to twist the story. I turned to Albert and told him everything. "Your family tried to force me into signing divorce papers behind your back," I said, "but they didn't expect me to have my own paperwork." He frowned. "What?" I stepped forward and tapped my folder. "That's everything I found over the past few months, bank records, emails, hidden transactions. You might want to take a look." Albert hesitated, then picked up the papers. As he flipped through them, his face turned pale, his breathing hitched, his hands shook. "Dad," his voice was barely a whisper, "what the hell is this?" His father said nothing. "Mom?" Albert's voice rose. "Tell me this isn't real." His mother wouldn't even look at him. I crossed my arms. "It's real, Albert, Your dad has been secretly taking money from our accounts for years. They used you like a piggy bank, bad business deals, covering Kayla's debts, fixing their mistakes. Every time they needed money, they took it from you. Albert looked like he'd been hit. He flipped through the papers faster, his breathing uneven. This can't be true. Oh, but it is, I said, and it gets worse. I pointed to a specific page. That's proof that your parents used our house as collateral for one of their bad business loans. I turned to his father. And guess what? That loan failed. If we hadn't found out in time, Albert, we would have lost our home. Albert's hands were shaking. He turned to his father, eyes full of anger and betrayal. You did what? His father sat there, silent. But I wasn't finished. Your family made me out to be the bad guy, Albert. I kept my voice calm and cold. They made me look like a problem while they took your money, and now that I know the truth, they want to get rid of me before I can tell you. Kayla snapped. That's a lie. I turned to her, unfazed. Oh, you sure about that? I reached into my bag again and pulled out more papers, a copy of her text messages. Maybe you'd like to explain why you told your friend how easy it was to trick Albert into signing financial papers without reading them? Kayla's face turned bright red. I didn't let her finish. I have proof, screenshots of your messages, your bank transfers, everything. Then I turned to Albert. Your family isn't just greedy, they've committed crimes. His father slammed his fist on the table. That's enough. I looked at him slowly. Oh, you don't get to decide that anymore. Albert was breathing hard now, staring at his parents like they were strangers. His mother's voice shook, but she still tried to sound in control. Albert Hugh, honey, we did this for you. Everything was for you. Don't, Albert snapped, his voice full of pain. Just don't. His mother flinched, finally quiet. For the first time, I saw fear in their eyes, because Albert wasn't under their control anymore. He turned to me, his eyes clearer than they had been in a long time. Then he looked at the divorce papers his family had tried to force on me. Slowly, his gaze moved to mine, the ones I had prepared, the ones that would break his family's hold on him for good. His voice was quiet but strong. What do we do next? I smiled. First, I said, sliding a pen across the table, you sign my papers. Albert stared at the pen, his hands shook, but his eyes never left his parents. His mother looked pale, his father looked like he was about to explode, and Kayla, she was furious. I knew this moment was huge. If Albert signed, his family would lose everything, their control, their money, their power over him. But before he could pick up the pen, his father jumped up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. No, Kelly growled, his voice deep and angry. You are not signing that. Albert flinched, but I didn't. Oh, he's signing it, I said, and after that, we're pressing charges, fraud, identity theft, stealing money. I'm sure a financial expert will have a field day with this. Kelly's face turned red, his fists clenched. You think you can walk into my house and threaten me? I smirked. It's not a threat, it's a fact. Then his mother spoke again, desperate. Albert Hugh, don't do this, she begged. Think of your family, think of everything we've done for you. Albert's jaw tightened. You stole from me, he said, his voice rough but steady. You lied to me, you almost made me lose my home. His mother reached for his hand, but he pulled away like her touch burned him. Please, sweetheart, she whispered. We love you. I scoffed. Yeah, funny way of showing it. Then I turned to Kayla. She had been too quiet. Nothing to say? I asked. No smart remarks? Or are you too busy realizing how screwed you are? Kayla opened her mouth, then closed it, looking at her parents in panic. Then suddenly, she snapped. You want the truth? She hissed, stepping toward me. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, please, I love the truth. Kayla sneered. Fine, you were never part of this family. We tolerated you. The only reason my parents didn't get rid of you sooner was because Albert was too stupid to see through you. Albert's fists clenched. Kayla. But she wasn't done. You're nothing without Albert, she spat. What will you do when this is over? Albert's success came from us. His connections? Ours. His career? Ours. You take him away from us, and you'll see how fast your life falls apart. I tilted my head. That so? Kayla smirked, crossing her arms. Yeah, so go ahead, leave, divorce him, take your little revenge, but in the end, we win. I chuckled. Then, without breaking eye contact, I pulled out another folder. Kayla's smirk faded. What is that? She asked. I grinned. Oh, Kayla. I tapped the folder against my palm. Did you really think I wouldn't dig deeper before coming here? I tossed the folder onto the table, right next to the divorce papers. Everyone, I said, waving my hands, let's talk about stealing money. Kayla froze. Her father's head snapped toward her so fast it looked painful. What? He barked. I nodded toward the folder. Turns out, Miss, I'm better than everyone, has been taking money from your family's accounts for years. Kayla's face turned pale. That's not true. I opened the folder and pulled out the proof: bank records, wire transfers, fake invoices, payments to herself disguised as business expenses. Oh, and my favorite part, do you recognize this name? I slid a specific page toward Albert. He frowned as he read it, then his eyes widened. This is Derek. Kayla's eyes went wild. Shut up. Albert looked at her, his face changing as he put it together. The Derek you said was just a friend? The guy you swore you never had anything with? Silence. Wow, I said, shaking my head. Not only did you steal from your own family, but you gave the money to your secret boyfriend? Kayla lunged at me, but Kelly grabbed her arm. Is this true? His voice was low and dangerous. Kayla yanked her arm away but didn't answer, because she couldn't. Her father's face twisted in rage. You idiot, he shouted. Do you have any idea what you've done? Her mother covered her mouth with shaking hands. Kayla, tell me this isn't true. But Kayla's face said it all. Oh, this is good, I said. Albert turned to me. How long have you known? I shrugged. A couple of months. I wanted to be sure before saying anything. Albert ran a hand down his face. Jesus Christ. His father flipped through the papers with shaking hands. This is a disaster. Yep, I said cheerfully, and now it's your problem. I turned to Albert. Sign the papers, I said. Let's end this. Albert looked at me, then at his mother, crying into her hands, at his father, frozen in shock, and finally, at Kayla, trembling with rage. Then, he picked up the pen and signed, cutting their control over him for good. His father let out a sharp breath, gripping the table. You're going to regret this, he hissed. I smiled. Oh, I don't think so. Then, I picked up my papers, grabbed Albert's hand, and walked out the door, leaving their perfect little world in ruins. The moment Albert signed those papers, it was over. I left that house with my head high, Albert beside me, while his family scrambled, trying to figure out how everything fell apart. But I wasn't finished. Because revenge? Oh, it's best when it's slow and for everyone to see. First, I took everything I had on them to a lawyer and a financial expert. Turns out, when you mess with money this badly, the government gets very interested. Within weeks, Albert's father's business was under investigation, his fake deals and shady loans exposed, and since he had used their house, yes, their house, to cover his bad investments, the bank came knocking. Their big fancy home? Gone. Their expensive cars? Taken. Even their family business, which had been around for generations, collapsed under all the lawsuits and unpaid debts. A mutual friend told me Albert's mother had a total meltdown when the bank took their house. Did I feel bad? Not one bit. Kayla, the family's spoiled princess, the one who thought she was untouchable? Turns out, she wasn't. The money she stole, the fake documents, the secret payments to her little boyfriend Derek, I handed it all over to the police. And here's the best part, since her father's business was falling apart at the same time, there was no one left to protect her. She got charged with fraud, stealing money, and lying to the government. When she was arrested, I actually opened a bottle of champagne. She tried to act like the victim, but karma wasn't buying it. I made sure her boss found out everything. She got fired, publicly, no references, no second chances. And Derek? He disappeared the second things got tough, leaving her to deal with everything alone. Last I heard, she was stuck in a miserable job, drowning in debt, and completely ignored by the rich social circles she used to brag about. Good riddance. Albert and I got divorced quickly. I got everything that was rightfully mine, my share of our money, the house they almost lost, and, most importantly, my peace. As for Albert, he wasn't completely innocent. He had ignored the truth for too long, letting his family control him, but now, I could see, he was done with them. Once he realized what they had done, he never spoke to his parents or Kayla again. To his credit, he didn't fight me on the divorce. He signed the papers, admitted he had been blind to the truth, and walked away from his family for good. And me? I took my money, moved to a new city, and built a wonderful new life. A life where I was finally free. The last thing I did? I made sure everyone in their rich little world knew the truth. The wealthy families they used to impress, the business connections they relied on, their so-called friends, everyone found out what happened. Suddenly, no one wanted anything to do with them. They lost everything, not just their money, but their reputation. They became a joke. And me? I was happier than ever. Because sometimes, revenge isn't just about payback. Sometimes, it's about watching people destroy themselves with their own mistakes. And I had the best seat in the house. The end.